Recording. Isaiah chapter 4. Isaiah chapter 4, starting at verse 2. In that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for them that are escaped of Israel. There are other places in the Bible when it talks about the branch of the Lord, and it's a capital B. You'll see that, I think, one time in Isaiah and some of the other prophets. That's talking about God the Son, when he is ruling in his kingdom. But because, now in modern versions, some other versions, they have this B here, a capitalized B. But I believe my King James Bible. And when it's got a small b, that's probably talking about the kingdom, his kingdom, that's going to be branched, and not Christ himself. So in that day, this is obviously talking about the millennial kingdom, which has not happened yet. The millennial kingdom, millennial means 1,000, and that's when Jesus Christ rules on this earth as king over all the governments of this world for 1,000 years. And who's the government of the world going to be at that time when he's ruling? Us Christians. We are going to have immortal bodies, and we will rule and reign with Jesus Christ over the mortals who are living on this earth. I believe there will be some Jews that make it through the tribulation period and into Christ's kingdom with mortal bodies. And I also believe there's going to be some unsaved people who make it through the millennial kingdom and into Christ's kingdom with mortal bodies. Because there are two separate peoples during those kingdoms there. And at the end of that, the unsaved are going to rise up and against Jerusalem, and Jesus is going to rain fire down from heaven and destroy them. Okay, they have to come from somewhere. So I believe those people are some unsaved people that make it through the tribulation period without taking the mark of the beast. And so when Jesus comes, they are as mortals living on this earth with the Jews that are mortals. Okay, so verse 2 again. In that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious. In other words, when Jesus comes back to this earth, he's going to redo this earth. It is not, it's going to be war-torn. When you read Revelation, you find out all the things that happens to this earth, where the grass is burned up, the trees are burnt up, the sun increases its strength and scorches men. There we have, that's where global warming is really going to be. And it will be caused because of the sun. And that's God making the sun hotter to scorch men, and they're going to blaspheme God, it says. But when Jesus comes back and sets up his kingdom on this earth, he's going to redo the earth and make it back like the Garden of Eden. Now after that is Judgment Day, and this heaven and earth is going to disappear. At that time, after that, God will make a brand new heaven and earth. It will not be this earth here redone. When Jesus sets up his kingdom on this earth, that's when this earth will just be redone, made over. And that's what this is talking about here, that Christ's kingdom is going to be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely. Comely is good for them that are escaped of Israel. And this is escaped of the judgment of Israel. Verse 3, and it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion, and he that remaineth in Jerusalem, shall be called holy, even everyone that is written among the living in Jerusalem. Obviously, this is talking about the book of life. The book of life. So this is talking about all those who are written in the book of life, and they are the ones that it is considered here God's remnant, who God saves. They remain in Jerusalem, shall be called holy. Okay, well, none of them, you can, at no time in history could God say everyone in Jerusalem was holy. But when Jesus sets up his kingdom, then he can say everyone that is in Jerusalem is holy. Verse 4, when the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion, and shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. Now, in the last chapter, chapter 3, we read about how the daughters of Zion have perverted themselves, and they were not seeking to please the Lord, and all they cared about was immorality and trying to attract the lust of men, and that's all they cared about that time. So at this time here, God is talking about the daughters of Jerusalem are going to be holy. They're going to be purged, and Jerusalem shall be purged of its blood. That's the shedding of innocent blood, and it will be done by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. And obviously that's when Jesus comes back. Verse 5, and the Lord shall create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion and upon her assemblies a cloud and a smoke by day and a shining of a flaming fire by night, for upon all the glory shall be a defense. And in the millennium, I guess God is going to do again what he did to the children of Israel as they were traveling through the wilderness back in Moses' day. And they were led by a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of cloud by day. Looks like God is going to do that again during the millennial kingdom. And I guess over Jerusalem, over to earthly Jerusalem, when Jesus comes back for his millennium, there will be a pillar of smoke by day and a pillar of fire by night. And then in verse 6 it says, and there shall be a tabernacle. A tabernacle is a tent. For a shadow in the daytime from the heat, and for a place of refuge, and for a comfort from storm and from rain. And the Lord is going to be that tabernacle. He's our tabernacle. We go to him when we're in trouble, when we have storms in our lives, and he helps us. And so I believe that's what this is talking about here, that during the millennium, the Lord will be like, there will be a protection, a tabernacle, a tent that will protect his people, and they can find shelter. Chapter 5. Now will I sing to my beloved a song of my beloved, touching his vineyard. My well-beloved hath a vineyard in a very fruitful hill. This almost sounds like Song of Solomon, if you've ever read that, about the bride, basically, and the groom talking to each other, which it's been taught that that's Jesus and his bride. But this right here, this is talking about, I think, this is talking about God, Israel, as a garden, and how God loved Israel. And it's going to go into some metaphor here about how God thought of Israel as a garden, and how what he did all for his garden, but yet it didn't turn out right. Almost like it says in chapter 1 there, when it says that he raised children and they rebelled against them. Similar to that. So, verse 2 starts off, and he fenced it, this is his garden, and gathered out the stones thereof. So, when you're preparing a garden, he fenced in the area where his garden's going to be, just like we would. And he took out the stones. We rake out all the stones so plants can grow. And it says, and planted it with the choicest vine. And so with the hardiest, with the best vines, he put in his vineyard. And, a vineyard is for grapes. So he got the best vines there were, and he planted them. And it says, and built a tower in the midst of it, and also made a winepress therein. and the winepress and the tower all have to do with making wine out of the grapes. And he looked that it should bring forth grapes, and it brought forth wild grapes. In other words, he was expecting a good crop out of the grapes out of Israel, and instead it brought forth wild or sour grapes. Grapes that were no good. And then so in verse 3, God is saying here, "And now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem, and men of Judea, judge, I pray you, betwixt me and my vineyard." So he's saying, you understand what I'm talking about here because you've planted grapes before. And he says, I want you to judge this situation out. I want you to tell me what could have been done. And then verse 4, "What could have been done more for my vineyard, that I have not done for it? Wherefore, when I looked that it should bring forth grapes, brought it forth wild grapes." So he's saying, men of Jerusalem, tell me what I could have done better. I told you what I did, and what more could I have done for my vineyard in order to produce good grapes, because it didn't produce good grapes. And obviously they're not going to have an answer. And verse 5, "And now go to, I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard." And so, obviously God couldn't have done anything else to produce good fruit out of Jerusalem. He'd done everything he could do. It's just Jerusalem, the people of Jerusalem, wanted to do evil. They didn't want to follow the Lord. So he says, he's going to rebuke them now and say what he's going to do to them. Obviously they wouldn't have an answer for him. So it says, "And now go to, I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will take away the hedge thereof." People put up a hedge around their vineyard to protect it from people coming and walking on the grapevines, or animals coming. So they made a wall and a hedge around it. And it says, verse 5 again, "And now go to, I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will take away the hedge thereof, and it shall be eaten up." So in other words, he's going to take away the hedge, and then wild animals are going to come in and eat it. "And break down the wall thereof, and it shall be trodden down." And he's going to break down the wall, so their people will come and stomp all over the grapevines. They're going to walk all over them. Verse 6, "And I will lay it waste, it shall not be pruned nor digged." In other words, when you prune, grapevines or fruit trees, when you prune off all the dead branches so it can bring forth more fruit. And when you dig it, is when you dig around each plant and put dung in there or fertilizer to help it grow. Okay? So God says, I'm not going to do any of that anymore. I'm going to tear down the wall, I'm going to tear down the hedge. People are going to come in and trot it down. Animals are going to come in and eat it. I'm not going to prune it. He's just giving up on it. "But there shall come up briars and thorns." In other words, picker bushes. "I will also command the clouds that they rain no rain upon it." And so God is using this metaphor to say, Israel, I've done everything I can for you to turn out righteous, for you to turn out a godly nation, but you've rebelled against me. You didn't want me. You didn't want to follow me. And so judgment is coming. And, we can apply these same things to the United States of America. I mean, when you read our history, we were founded upon the Bible. You go to Washington, D.C., there's Bible verses everywhere engraved in stone. When you read quotes from our founding fathers, most of them were Bible verses. But just like Israel, the United States has turned its back on God. And what's God going to do? He's going to bring judgment. I mean, what does this teach us? This teaches us, why do we hear so much about judgment here in the book of Isaiah and all through the Old Testament. Why do we see so much bloodshed and judgment? Because just like Israel here, they didn't fear God. Most of the people in the United States do not fear God. God, the purpose of the first 39 chapters of Isaiah and the first 39 books of the Old Testament is to get people to fear God. If churches would read the Old Testament and believe it, they would fear God. If the people of the United States would read the Old Testament, they would learn to fear God. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, the beginning of knowledge. Verse 7. For the vineyard of the Lord is the house of Israel, and the man of Judah his pleasant plant. And he looked for judgment. In other words, he looked for justice in the land. But behold, oppression. Instead of justice going on in the land, in other words, instead of people being judged for the wrongs that were done against them and evildoers getting punished, there was only oppression. It was the opposite. Evildoers are getting rewarded, and those who are getting discriminated against, let's say, those who are not being judged correctly, they're not finding justice in the land, only oppression. For righteousness, but behold, they cry. So God is looking for righteousness in the land, but there's not. There's only the cry of those who are oppressed. Verse 8. Woe unto them that join house to house, that lay field to field, until there be no place, that they may be placed alone in the midst of the earth. In other words, God is saying, woe unto them that, say, live in the inner city. Why? Because there's no place to get alone. I mean, it's all crowded. Verse 9. In mine ears, saith the Lord of hosts, of a truth, many houses shall be desolate, even great and fair, without inhabitant. What's happening to our major cities is just like what was happening here. They build house to house. It's all crowded with buildings. But then there's going to be, what's happening to Detroit? It's looking like a wasteland. Look at Detroit today compared to what it looked like in the 1950s. It's a wasteland. And that is exactly what is happening because as we as a nation, as we reject God, this is part of the judgment of God upon a nation, the cities turning to wasteland. And not only that, we have verse 10. Yea, 10 acres of a vineyard shall yield one bath. In other words, a person out in the country who is, this is part of the judgment of God too, they plant 10 acres worth of vineyard, but they only get one bath, or say just a few gallons of wine out of it. Now 10 acres of land should produce gallons and gallons and gallons of wine. 10 acres is pretty big. But instead, it's just producing a few gallons, that's it. And the seed of a homer, which is about 160 gallons, shall yield an ephod, which is about a tenth of that. So people are going out, they're planting lots of seed, but only bringing back a little of the product. That's part of the judgment of God. Do you know why we have to use so many pesticides and things on plants to try to get them to produce good fruit? Because the judgment of God is destroying it. So mankind is trying to do what it can to get things straight, or to help things out from the judgment of God. That's why we have to do so much more than should normally have to be done to get things to grow, to get vegetables to grow, to get fruit to grow. That's all part of the judgment of God. Verse 11, woe unto them that rise up early in the morning, that they may follow strong drink, that continue until night, until wine inflame them. And obviously this is talking about drunkards. Drunkards, well, they're always looking for times to drink. Drunkards, what do? They look forward to beer 30 when they get off work so they can drink. What do drunkards do? They look forward to the weekend so they can drink. Drunkards look forward to the holidays so they can drink. And just like then, we got a land of drunkards. Today, in the United States, we are a land of drunkards. That's part of the judgment of God. Verse 2, and the harp and the viol, that's an instrument, and the tabret and the pipe and wine are in their feasts. But they regard not the work of the Lord, neither consider the operation of his hands. People celebrate, they have parties, but they are not considering God at all. Just like goes on today. People party, they have fun, they have celebrations. But do they consider God? Christmas used to be a holiday that the United States celebrated as the birth of Christ. Now, they just celebrate Santa Claus. What are they doing? They've taken away from the true meaning, which is about God, and so they're making celebrations where they don't have to think about God. Thanksgiving was a day that we give thanks unto the Lord for how he prospered us that year. But what has it turned into? Turkey Day and Family Day. And they don't bring up God. Same thing. We as Christians, we need to make sure that as the world denounces God, we promote God even more.
Amen.
Verse 13. Therefore my people are gone into captivity. Now this is what's going to happen. 100 years later, from this time, they are going to go in captivity from Nebuchadnezzar. Now the northern kingdom will go into captivity before that. But when Nebuchadnezzar comes and brings Jerusalem into captivity, destroys the city, and takes those of Jerusalem into captivity, that is 100 years off yet. So therefore my people are gone into captivity because they have no knowledge. What does the Bible say is the beginning of knowledge? The fear of the Lord. Why do they have no knowledge? Because they do not fear God. Noah Webster, the one who gave us our dictionary, said that education is useless without the Bible. What does that mean? That means the teaching of evolution. That is useless education because it's not true. Things that are true, those things are not worthless education. But obviously things that are not true is worthless education. So verse 13 again, therefore my people are gone into captivity because they have no knowledge, and their honorable men are famished, and their multitude dried up with thirst. Have you ever been famished? You know, so hungry you're just ready to eat anything? Famished? And their multitude dried up with thirst. And so, basically, their honorable men are weak, just like in chapter 3 when God said he takes away all the great men. The honorable men are famished, means there aren't any. God has taken them away. Where are the honorable men today? There are none, really. God has taken them away. Honorable men are men who stand up for what is right, according to what God says. Honorable men are men who keep their word. Honorable men are men who want justice and judgment in the land. That's honorable men. Honorable men are not people who love their sins. Honorable men are not necessarily men who have big muscles. Big muscles does not make an honorable man. Verse 14. Therefore hell hath enlarged herself. Oh, isn't that something? Isn't that a statement? Because people reject God, because people do not want God, hell hath enlarged herself. Why is that? You know, God is not willing that any should perish, that all should come to repentance. So, God wants everyone to get saved, but as people reject God, as people hate God, they love their sins, hell hath enlarged herself. Sometimes you'll see a bumper sticker that says, I went to hell, but it was full, so I came back. Hell is never full. If it ever got full, it would enlarge itself even more. So, verse 14, wherefore hell hath enlarged herself, and opened her mouth without measure. In other words, the mouth of hell is going to be opened so wide, people can't even measure it. And we can say that today, just like the Bible teaches what, Jesus said, the broad to destruction is wide, and many there be on that road. And today, most of the people that die, just like all time, most people that die end up in hell. And that's what it's talking about here. And open her mouth without measure, and their glory, in other words, the fame of people, and their multitude, and their pomp, that's their parade, no matter how popular they were, no matter how famous they were, no matter how big, they had a parade, and he that rejoiceth shall descend into it. All these sinners that rejoice in their sin, gay pride parade, what is that? That's people rejoicing in their sin. What does it say? They're going to descend into it. What is it? Hell. Into hell. They're going to descend into hell. Every one of them. None of them are going to escape. 15. And the mean man shall be brought down, and the mighty man shall be humbled. So in other words, the mean man, we have this doesn't mean a person that is angry all the time. When it says the mean man and then it has the mighty man, it's comparing the two. And so the mean man is just the opposite of the mighty man. The person that people don't expect much from. The poor man, let's say. So it says, the mean man shall be brought down, and the mighty man shall be humbled, and the eyes of the lofty shall be humbled. So all these people on this earth that hate God, they love their sin, they parade their sin, they're proud of their sin, and they pride themselves, but God says every one of them is going to be humbled. He is going to humble them. Verse 16, but the Lord of hosts shall be exalted in judgment, and God that is holy shall be sanctified in righteousness. In other words, all the sinners that brag against God, that boast against God today, God is going to humble them, just like he humbled Satan. Satan on Judgment Day is going to be on his knees, and people are going to look at him and say, is this the one that destroyed the earth and destroyed the cities? Him? He's nothing. And God is going to humble him. He's going to be in hell, but he is going to bow the knee to God, and everyone that is proud against God today is going to bow the knee to God tomorrow. Everyone. Hitler will bow his knee to God. All the atheists, all the people that hate God today and brag about their sin, they're going to be on their knee, and God is going to humble them, and they're all going to say Jesus is Lord at that time. And God will be exalted because he is righteous and holy. Verse 17. Then shall the lambs feed after their manner, and the waste places of the fat ones shall strangers eat. And so all that they brag about, the animals are going to come in and eat up the vineyard. Basically, still talking about the vineyard. Verse 18, woe unto them that draw iniquity with cords of vanity, that sin as it were a cart rope. In other words, the wicked brag in their sin, and they try to haul their sin. They try to haul their sin wherever they go, because they love their sins. Verse 19, and this is the wicked sinners, how they mock God. It says, they say, let him make speed and hasten his work, that we may see it. And let the counsel of the Holy One of Israel draw nigh and come, that we may know it. Sinners will say things like that today. If God is real, let him come down here right now. If God is real, let him strike me dead right now. See, they're boasting in themselves. They don't know their day is coming when God is going to strike them down. Realize that's like a person standing on the railroad tracks and saying, if a train is real, let it come and hit me now. Stay there. Stay right there. Eventually the train is going to come and hit you. And that's just like the judgment of God. They can brag all they want about how God is not striking them dead. They can blaspheme God all they want, and God's not doing anything about it. Don't worry. The day is coming. The day is coming when God will do something about it. And I guarantee, when God does something about it, the sinners are not going to have the same attitude. They will be in fear. So this is them mocking God. Now verse 20. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. And that's what people do today. They do the same thing today. If we are out street preaching, the crowd is cursing us and we're preaching God's word. And then two lesbians or two homos will come up in front of us and kiss. And the crowd applauds them as if that is something good. They call God's word evil, which means they're calling God evil, and they're calling sin good, and that is what's happening today. That is what's happening today. Verse 21. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes, and prudent in their own sight. People that are full of pride, they're right in their own eyes. Whatever they do is right. And that's the theme through the book of Judges. The theme in the book of Judges is every man did what was right in his own eyes. That's why when you read through the book of Judges, you're going to say, that's crazy. Wow, that's insane. That really happened? God did not condone the things that happened in the book of Judges. It's when every man did what was right in his own eyes. Hey, if everybody does what's right in their own eyes instead of what's right in God's eyes, if you think murder's okay, then it must be okay. And some people do think murder's okay because they abort their babies. That's murder. So they're doing what's right in their own eyes. They are their own judges. They've drawn up their own rules. And there are many people that are just like that who say they believe in Jesus. And what they've done is they have created their own Jesus. They've made a Jesus up in their mind who goes by their rules. That's a false Jesus. Or goes by their religion's rules. If it's not the Jesus of the Bible, it's a false Jesus. And today, fake Christianity is the fastest growing religion in the United States. And it's because people have a false Jesus. The Bible warns about a false Jesus. So just because a person says they believe in Jesus, that does not mean it's the Jesus of the Bible. Verse 22, woe unto them that are mighty to drink wine, and men of strength to mingle strong drink. And the same thing's happening today. Don't people have contests in bars on how much they can drink? They have drinking contests in bars. That's exactly what this is talking about. God says, woe unto them. That's not blessings. That's not blessings from God. Woe unto them is because they are self-destructing. They are hurting themselves. So, 22 talks about those who have drinking contests, and then in 23 it says, which justify the wicked for reward, and take away the righteousness of the righteous from him. So, if we have a land of drunkards, obviously justice is going to be perverted. And justice is perverted today. People can kill someone and only get 15 years in prison. A person can abuse an animal or a dog and get 30 years in prison. That's unjust. I know people love animals, but people should never love animals more than humans. Humans are made in the image of God. Animals are not. And that is a perverted judgment there. When people take away the righteousness of the righteous, in other words, people that are doing right, they take away justice from them. They put street preachers in jail for preaching. That's unjust. That's unjust. Realize this, at homosexual parades, you can have people going down the street naked in front of little kids, and nothing is said about that. And you get a street preacher out there preaching against it, and they go to jail. That's what it's talking about here. That is not justice. That's injustice. And as our nation gets more and more wicked, the more injustice we are going to see. But just realize who's in control and realize that God is keeping score. Amen. And if you get mistreated for living for Jesus Christ, just realize great is your reward in heaven. Amen. Okay? So we're going to end right there with verse 23 of Isaiah chapter 5.